All right, friends. Today was May 1st, 2024. It is, there's only 2 days left of General Conference, and there was a lot of movement today that I would consider unfortunate. It's been kind of demoralizing to spend my whole day on this. I knew it was coming. I mean, there was almost no hope that conservatives were going to carry the day on anything. There was a little bit of hope that they would be able to. I think the biggest thing that we were hoping that the remaining conservative, primarily African delegation could do would be to protect paragraph 2553 so that African churches could disaffiliate that way, because it would have been extended for 3 years by the way that it had been interpreted years prior. It's really nerdy. Don't make me explain it. But instead, one of the things, there were 3 R's and then 5 R's that mainstream UMC was promoting, and they've gotten their way on all of them, including regionalization. That passed last week, which was a big surprise for everybody because that required a 2/3 vote. But today it was resisting disaffiliations or something. And so there was no disaffiliation agreement that got through legislative assembly or groups that met last week. 2553 was the only disaffiliation provision remaining, which doesn't apply to America anymore. Africans argued to maintain it. One American got up and tried to put Lonnie Brooks' proposal for disaffiliation back on the table, and he was not successful. They successfully shut down all disaffiliation. As it stands right now, there is no way to disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church. The only way in which what I just said is not true is that there is a way for central conferences to go through a prolonged process as a whole conference to seek a different affiliation status with the denomination and kind of depart. If I didn't say it already, that was paragraph 572, and that is much more arduous. It takes a very long time, and it's a collective decision. So it is true to say there is literally no provision now for individual churches to disaffiliate from the United Methodist Church. Now, there is still a provision that has been used in the past couple of years, and definitely going back further than that, paragraph 2549. Some conferences have used that more than others, where they negotiate with the local congregation to close the church and sell the property back to them for an agreed upon rate. So many annual conferences have done that, some alongside 2553, some exclusively only doing 2549. Many annual conferences have made promises that depending on how General Conference went, they would allow disaffiliations afterwards if the denomination changed its position. The position has changed. Whenever we're talking about human sexuality, there is not just one place in the Book of Discipline that deals with human sexuality. There are many different places that deal with it. And from day to day, at the very beginning of the day, you have like the agenda that gets approved that is way too vague. I mean, there are certain general complaints I have against General Conference. One of them is the agenda they offer is so vague as to be unhelpful. But they do agenda and calendar. Then they do a consent calendar, which is an omnibus package. Essentially, these legislative committees met, reviewed a lot of different legislation. They voted on each one. If a legislative item got enough votes in favor, if there weren't 10 votes against or more, then it gets put on the consent calendar, and it's an up-down vote with 20, 30, 40, 50 pieces of legislation altogether. So these liberalizing positions on sexuality. Today it was clergy can now be gay, and gay weddings can be done in local churches. That's the stuff that I took note of this morning. So these were things that changed today. Yesterday, there were several changes. The only thing that I'm aware of still needs to change is the part of the social principles dealing with human sexuality that actually redefines marriage. So all of this, it's demoralizing because it's not all at once. So they knock out regionalization, then they start knocking out human sexuality, and then today disaffiliation was on the plate as well. And the thing that was particularly shameful about that particular conversation was that for the most part, Africans have not spoken up much in the plenary assembly. When they have, they've been disrespected. In particular, Reverend Dr. Jerry Kula of Liberia was disrespected by Tom Berlin whenever he asked about why the change was made not to allow moments of personal privilege. That was last week on Saturday. Then he was also disrespected by Bishop Williamston, and I'm not immediately recalling that circumstance, but that was really crummy. Oh, I think that was whenever he was asking for an explanation of what it was that a particular worship service was supposed to be repenting for, and they were refusing to give an explanation for some reason. I think that was on Monday. And then today, he apparently gave an impassioned speech. I was putting my kids down to sleep at that time, so I need to go back and watch that. But he was disrespected. Forbes Matanga got up and spoke for the African delegation about the final piece of regionalization that they were not fond of, and of course they were disregarded as the African voice has been disregarded throughout this General Conference. It's worth remembering on day one, David Livingston, representing the mainstream UMC, got up and acknowledged that the African delegation was far from in full force. Mainstream UMC has been saying that they're lacking a third of their delegation, the Africans are. So Livingston said that their voice needed to be given greater weight in the assembly. But from outside observers like me, it seems to me like the African voice counts for very little. The best example of that was today in the midst of the disaffiliation conversation. There was a gentleman from, I forget which African nation, got up and was speaking while Bishop Sines was presiding. And he was given 2 minutes to speak, and with 15 seconds left, Sines just interrupted him, turned to a point of order over here, which was some white lady from America just saying, "I'm hungry and we're past lunchtime, so we need to adjourn." Then they adjourned for all of lunch, didn't let the guy finish his speech, called back, and then Bishop Sue Halpert Johnson said, "Okay, you got 30 seconds to finish your speech." And I'm sure she felt very gracious about giving him 30 seconds. That's just so crazy to me. And she came back at the end of her time and said, I hear some people think that's disrespectful what I did, but I meant no disrespect by it. This is the same lady, by the way, that in North Georgia ended disaffiliations because she said there was too much disinformation and then poisoned the well for everybody. What was that, 2-3 weeks ago? She made more public statements about how there was misinformation going around. To this day, no misinformation has been substantiated ever, anywhere, that GMC or WCA or Good News has put out. It's just a false allegation that bishops have made, and then they preside. The final presiding bishop today was Cynthia Fierro Harvey, who had the ignominious task in 2019 of finally letting the traditionalists have their way and pass the legislation. And then she just got done in this final session. The last couple hours were super boring. They were electing people to different boards. But she said, this is really great. Last time I was up here was awful, but God's doing a new thing from us, and we're making history. And it's the whole, one of the broader things about this General Conference that I've really just found astounding is how tone deaf and clueless this body of people seems to be. They seem to have no real understanding of the context, the cultural context in which they're operating, the way in which they're building a foundation on a fantasy. And they think that they are on the right side of history and doing a new thing, and God is just going to bless it and they're going to flourish, when in actuality what they've done is committed group suicide because they have alienated the majority of the denomination from them. The next several years are going to be marked by Americans and Africans en masse trying to get away from them, some of them suing the denomination, all of them bad-mouthing the denomination, and there being no way out. They're all trapped in a cage together now, and who knows what's going to happen. It could be that the United Methodist Church maintains a place of preeminence legally, and that they can just continue to take the assets of local churches that don't toe the line. Could also be that Harvest Church in Dothan, Alabama is going to change jurisprudence, and you're going to start seeing local churches that are able to dismantle annual conferences. Either way, this stuff costs a lot of money, and it takes a lot of resources away from already strained conference staffs. It was a ridiculous set of decisions made today when they disallowed disaffiliation. I think what they're hoping to do is to create an illusion that everybody is now on board together. That illusion is going to be exposed for the false narrative that it is. There were more things that happened today. Oh, one particularly silly thing was that after they agreed that disaffiliation was no good, they did very graciously allow for a reaffiliation petition for those churches that exited and then just realized that they can't do it on their own and they need their United Methodist Church back. If there is a single church that does this, I want to hear about it. But just so you know, annual conferences can now design reaffiliation processes to let all these churches back in. So isn't that nice? There were more things that happened. I can't think of them. It's been a long day. But I think I did give a decent broad overview. I'll just, one last gripe for anyone listening, hopefully in the Global Methodist Church. I'm a Global Methodist pastor. I hope people are listening to me, of course, just on pins and needles, wanting to design General Conference in a way that pleases me. But I don't see the point of having these motivational presentations, these like canned speeches and stuff. Film those things beforehand, put them out, let everybody watch them. And then when they get together, everybody can watch a screen together. The thing they can't do at a general conference or annual conference is interact face-to-face with each other. So I hope that the General Conference of the Global Methodist Church really capitalizes on that, the interpersonal connection around the person and work of Christ, and all the presentations, the dancing, the skits, the facts and figures, all this. Do that somewhere else. This seems very basic to me. Maybe I'm a curmudgeon. Maybe I'm grouchy. Maybe everybody loves getting together and staring up at a screen together. It seems to me y'all have better things to be doing. So anyway, it's a sad day. We knew it was coming. The writing's been on the wall for a long time. It's still really sad when you see it happen. So I'll just speak broadly there. The majority of people who built the denomination up to get to where it is today almost surely did not want to see it get here. Surely most of them would look at the assembly as it is now, with every person having to get up and say their name and their race and their sex. They would look at that and just go, what are these people doing? What connection does this have to the past? And the answer is very little. They're doing a new thing, guys. They're going on without you. And you are part of the draconian past, and they're part of the future. They're on the right side of history. You're on the wrong. They have no place for you. If you don't want to be with them, maybe you're in the wrong room, and you need to leave. Leave your building and your assets behind. They'll know what to do with them. You can see yourself out. It's a pretty sad way to be. But it looks like that's how things are going to prevail and end here, and it's a sad story. I don't think God is glorified, and I'm embarrassed for them. But they're feeling pretty good right now, and God will judge. It could be that I'm wrong. Could be that my side was wrong. God alone is judge. But in the meantime, me and people like me are just discouraged and just appalled at what we see as a complete lack of self-awareness on the part of those in charge of the United Methodist Church. So that's my summary. I'll cut things off there and republish it later. There have been, oh my gosh, so many comments